I thought the deed to my new cottage was a declaration of independence, a barrier of brick and mortar between me and them. But when I unlocked the front door, the silence I craved was missing. Instead, I heard my mother humming in my kitchen while my sister measured my living room for her oversized sectional. I froze, realizing the $300,000 I had just spent hadn't bought me freedom. It had just bought my sister her dream home. My name is Emery Davis, and until 4 o'clock this afternoon, I believed I had finally purchased my freedom. I clocked out early, my bag heavy with a bottle of champagne and a receipt for a single, high-end scented candle that cost $45, a frivolous purchase that felt like a rebellion in itself. I drove toward the edge of town, where the sprawling suburbs gave way to wooded lots and privacy. My new home was a modern cottage, small but architectural, with sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling glass that looked out onto nothing but trees. It was the first thing in my 29 years of life that did not have my sister's name attached to it, or so I thought. As I pulled into the gravel driveway, the knot in my shoulders began to loosen, only to retighten instantly into a hard, painful stone. The front porch light was on. I had not turned it on. I lived alone. I had not invited a single soul, not even a contractor, and certainly not a guest. I cut the engine and sat in the silence of my car for a moment. Staring at the warm glow spilling from the living room window, a burglar would have been preferable. A burglar I could call the police on without hesitation. But the silhouette moving past the window was too familiar, too comfortable. It moved with the entitlement of ownership. I grabbed the champagne bottle by the neck, not to celebrate, but because I needed something to hold on to, and marched to the front door. I did not need to unlock it. It was already unlocked. The air inside smelled of my new paint and my mother's overpowering floral perfume. Mom was in the center of the living room. She was not just standing there. She was curating. She had shifted my minimalist gray sofa 3 feet to the left and was currently fluffing a throw pillow I had explicitly placed on the armchair. "Oh, Emery, finally," she said, her voice light and airy, as if I were the one who was late to a party I didn't know I was hosting. "This room has terrible flow. Honey, you need to open it up if you want the boys to have room to run around." Before I could form the words to ask how she got in, a metal tape measure snapped loudly from the hallway. Blair walked in. My younger sister looked around the room, chewing on the end of a pen, holding a notepad. She didn't look at me. She looked at the walls. 12 by 14, Blair muttered, scribbling. Then she looked up, beaming. "Oh, good. You're here. We were just debating the layout. I think the master bedroom has to be for me and Mark because of the ensuite, obviously. We can put the twins in the second bedroom, but we'll need to figure out where to put your stuff." My grip on the bottle tightened until my knuckles turned white. "My stuff?" I asked, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, hollow and cold. "Blair, this is my house. All of it is my stuff. Where are you getting this?" Blair laughed, a dismissive, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Don't be dramatic. We're just planning. I was thinking, since you work so much, maybe we convert the garage? It's insulated, right? It would make a really cute studio apartment for you. Private." The garage. She wanted to put me in the garage of the home I had just spent 3 years saving for, skipping vacations, and eating instant noodles to afford. I turned to my mother. "How did you get in here?" Mom waved her hand dismissively, walking over to inspect my fireplace mantel. "Don't worry about that." "I am worrying about that," I said, stepping between her and the fireplace. "I never gave you a key. I never even gave you the address. I only sent you pictures of the interior." Mom sighed, the sound of a martyr being forced to explain simple concepts to a slow child. "Well, when I stopped by your apartment last week to congratulate you, you know, when I had that upset stomach and needed to use your bathroom." The memory flashed back with nauseating clarity. She had asked for water. She had gone into the bathroom. My purse had been sitting on the counter right next to the bathroom door, my new house keys dangling from the side. "You took my keys," I stated. It wasn't a question. I borrowed them to make a copy while you were on that call, she corrected, smiling like she had done me a favor. A mother always needs emergency access. Emery, what if you slipped in the shower? Besides, look at this place. It is too much for one person. It's selfish to keep 3 bedrooms empty when your sister is squeezed into that apartment. I bought this house, I said, my voice rising. My name is on the deed. My money paid the down payment. Blair isn't moving in. None of you are moving in. The room went deadly silent. Blair dropped her pen. It clattered on the hardwood floor. You're kicking us out? Blair asked, her eyes instantly welling up with tears, a trick she had perfected by age 7. But I already told the boys they'd have a yard. I told them Auntie Em bought us a house. I bought me a house, I corrected. Get out, now. Emery Davis, Mom snapped, her voice dropping the sweet facade and hitting that sharp, authoritative tone that used to make me flinch. Family is for sharing. You have always been like this. Stingy, cold. Your sister needs this. You don't need all this space. I need you to leave, I said, walking to the front door and holding it open. The evening air rushed in, cool and biting. I am not discussing this. Give me the key. And get out. Mom stared at me for a long beat, searching for the crack in my armor, the usual sign of surrender. When she didn't find it, she huffed, digging into her purse and slamming a shiny new silver key onto the entry table. You are breaking her heart, Mom hissed as she brushed past me. I hope you are happy in this big, empty box, Blair followed, wiping her dry eyes, shooting me a look of pure venom. The garage would have been nice. You know, we were going to let you decorate it. I slammed the door shut behind them. The lock clicked, a heavy mechanical sound that echoed in the sudden silence. I leaned my forehead against the wood, breathing hard. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I turned around and looked at my kitchen. It was beautiful. It was quiet. But the silence felt different now. It didn't feel like peace. It felt like the pause between lightning and thunder. I walked into the kitchen to put down the champagne I no longer wanted to drink. On the marble island, right where I used to imagine chopping vegetables for solo dinners, was a piece of paper. I picked it up. It was in my mother's handwriting. It wasn't a note from today. The ink was dry. The paper slightly creased, as if it had been folded in a pocket for weeks. Title: Nursery Essentials Renovations. Bullet point 1. Knock down wall between master and second bed for playroom. Bullet point 2. Safety gate for stairs. Bullet point 3. Sell Emery's dining set. Too sharp for kids. I stared at the paper, my blood running cold. This wasn't a spontaneous idea they had when they walked in today. They hadn't just decided to measure the rooms on a whim. They had been planning this since the moment I told them my offer was accepted. They didn't see me as a homeowner. They saw me as a placeholder, a bank account, a temporary occupant in my own life. I looked at the date at the top of the list. 2 weeks ago, I wasn't just fighting a misunderstanding. I was standing in the middle of a hostile takeover. The piece of paper trembling in my hand was not a shopping list. It was an archaeological artifact, a fossil proving that my erasure from this family was not a sudden event, but a geological era. I looked around the kitchen, my kitchen. With its quartz countertops, I had selected after 3 months of agonizing comparisons, and I did not see a home anymore. I saw a battlefield where I had lost before I even knew the war had started. This feeling, this hollow sensation of being a guest in my own life, was not new. It was the background radiation of my childhood, in the Davis household. There was an unwritten constitution, and the first article was always the same. Blair needs, so Emery yields. Blair is the fragile bird with the broken wing. Emery is the sturdy branch that exists solely to support the nest. I closed my eyes and the memory hit me, sharp and bright as a camera flash. 5 years ago, Blair's high school graduation, my parents rented the ballroom at the local country club. There was a DJ, a 3-tiered cake with fondant diplomas, and 300 guests. My mother had worn a sequined dress that cost more than my first car. I remembered standing in the corner, holding a glass of lukewarm punch, watching my father toast Blair as the shining star of our lineage, because she had managed to graduate with a solid C average. Contrast that with 6 months prior. I had received my master's degree in business administration, graduating with highest honors. I did not get a party. I did not get a cake. I got a text message from my mother, sent 24 hours after the ceremony, because they had been swamped helping Blair study for finals. The text read, "Proud of you. Did you remember to send Blair her allowance?" That was the pattern. My achievements were expected, mere footnotes to the headline drama of Blair's existence. My struggles were invisible. Her struggles were national emergencies. I walked over to the sliding glass door and looked out at the dark backyard. That was why I had bought this house in secret. It wasn't just about surprise, it was about possession. I wanted one thing, just one single thing in this world. That did not require a committee vote. I wanted to paint a wall blue without my mother telling me Blair hates blue. I wanted a spare room that stayed empty simply because I wanted it empty, not because it was waiting for Blair's overflow. I had thought secrecy was my shield, but looking at the nursery list, I realized my shield was made of paper. The silence of the house was shattered by my phone buzzing on the counter. The screen lit up with a photo I hadn't changed in years. My father, Gordon, smiling in a fishing boat. My stomach dropped. This was the second phase of the assault. First comes the invasion, then comes the enforcement. I let it ring 3 times, my hand hovering over the decline button. But old habits are iron chains. I answered. "You made your mother cry," Gordon said. "No hello, no congratulations on the house, just the accusation, delivered with the heavy, disappointed sigh of a judge sentencing a repeat offender. "She broke into my house, Dad," I said, keeping my voice level, though my knees were shaking. "She stole my key. She brought Blair here to measure rooms for furniture I didn't buy." "She was trying to help," he countered, his voice smoothing out into that reasonable, mediator tone that terrified me more than his shouting. "You know how your mother is. She gets excited. She nests. It is her way of showing love. Emery, and frankly, your reaction was over the top. Kicking them out? Like common trespassers?" "They were trespassing," I said. "It is family," Gordon snapped, the patience fraying. "You have a 3-bedroom house. Emery, 3 bedrooms. You are one person. What are you going to do with all that space? Echo?" "I am going to live in it," I said. "It is my office. It is my guest room. It is whatever I want it to be." "Blair is struggling," he said. There it was. The trump card. The ultimate silencer. "Mark's hours got cut at the shop. The apartment is cramping them. The boys need a yard. You know this. You have always been the one who understands. Emery, you have always been the strong one. Why are you being so selfish now?" The word selfish hung in the air, heavy and toxic. For a split second, the indoctrination kicked in. I felt the guilt rise like bile. Maybe he was right. I was just one woman. Did I really need 1,700 square feet? Was I being cruel? I could take the garage. It was insulated. Like Blair said, I could make it nice. It would save them money. And Mom would be happy. And Dad would stop sighing. And we could be a family again. Then I looked at the kitchen island. I remembered Blair's face as she measured the master bedroom. She wasn't asking for help. She was measuring for curtains. She hadn't asked if she could stay. She had decided which room was hers. They didn't want my help. They wanted my life. They wanted to hollow me out and wear my success like a skin suit. "I am not doing this. Dad," I said. The guilt was still there, but anger was starting to eclipse it. "I am not giving up my house. Tell them to back off. We will discuss this at dinner on Sunday," Gordon said, his voice hardening into a command. "And you will apologize to your mother. She is a wreck." The line went dead. I stood there, the phone warm against my ear, listening to the dial tone. He hadn't heard a word I said. To him, my no was just a tantrum, A temporary malfunction in the appliance that was Emery Davis. He assumed, as he always did, that a few days of silence and a guilt trip would reset me to factory settings. I placed the phone down on the counter, very gently. I needed to think. I needed to not just react, but to strategize. If I screamed, I was the hysterical daughter. If I cried, I was the ungrateful child. I needed to be something else. I walked to my bag and pulled out a fresh notebook I had bought for work. I sat down at the island, pushed the nursery essentials list to the side, and opened to the first blank page. I uncapped my pen. My hand was trembling, but I forced it to steady. Date: February 10th. Time: 5:15 p.m. Incident: unauthorized entry. Details: Mother, Maris, and sister, Blair, used a duplicate key obtained without consent to enter premises. Blair observed measuring master bedroom. Mother admitted to copying key during visit on February 3rd. Evidence: handwritten list of renovations found on counter. Witnessed by self. I wrote it all down. Every word, every timestamp. This wasn't a diary. This was a deposition. I was building a case. Not for a court of law, at least, not yet, but for my own sanity. I needed to see it in ink to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was under siege. When I finished writing, I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. I closed the notebook. I walked into the living room. On the mantel, above the fireplace I had never lit, stood a framed photograph of the four of us. Mom, Dad, Blair, and me, taken at a Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago. In the photo, I was in the back, slightly out of focus, while Blair sat in the front, beaming, flanked by my doting parents. I looked at their smiles. They looked so happy. They looked complete. I reached out and tipped the frame forward. It fell face down on the wood with a sharp clack. I didn't remove it. I just couldn't look at it anymore. I wasn't the daughter in that picture anymore. That daughter would have moved into the garage. That daughter would have apologized. I turned off the living room lights, leaving the picture in the dark. I had a lot of work to do. The blue light of my phone screen was the only thing illuminating the living room. I sat on the floor, my back against the pristine white wall I had paid a contractor $2,000 to paint, and scrolled. I wasn't looking at design inspiration anymore. I was looking at Blair's social media. My sister's online persona was a carefully curated exhibit of chaotic motherhood and blessed humility. Her feed was a pastel-colored shrine to her struggles, usually caption-heavy with complaints about how tiny their current apartment was. But as I scrolled back, the narrative shifted. 3 weeks ago, exact date, January 20th, she had posted a photo of her 2 boys sitting in a cardboard box fortress in their living room. The caption read, "The fort is temporary, but the memories are forever. So excited to tell these little guys that they won't be squeezed into a 2-bedroom much longer. Big changes coming. New chapter family. First growing up." I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. January 20th was the day my offer on the cottage was accepted. I hadn't even told them yet. I had only told the bank and my realtor. I scrolled down to the comments. Aunt Sarah: "Oh, honey, that is wonderful news. Is it the one with the big oak tree?" Blair: "Yes, the yard is huge. The boys are going to freak out." I stopped breathing. My house had a massive oak tree in the front yard. I kept scrolling, my thumb moving mechanically. 2 posts later, a picture of paint swatches. Sage green and soft cloud blue. Blair's caption: "Trying to decide on a vibe for the boys' new rooms. Grandma Maris thinks green for the oldest, but I'm leaning blue. Thoughts?" Comment from a user named Mama Bear Maris: "Green, sweetie. It goes better with the light in the east bedroom. The morning sun hits that side hard." I dropped the phone on the carpet as if it had burned me. The east bedroom, my guest room, the one with the large bay window that caught the sunrise. My mother knew the orientation of the light. She knew which room was which. They hadn't just hoped I would share. They had toured the house. Maybe they had driven by. Maybe they had looked at the listing photos online with a magnifying glass. Or maybe, and this thought made me nauseous, my mother had used her connections in town to get a viewing before I even signed the papers. They had divided up the square footage of my home before I had even packed a single box. To them, my mortgage was just a technicality, a funding mechanism for Blair's upgrade. Ping! A notification banner slid down from the top of my screen. It wasn't a text. It was a WhatsApp notification. You have been added to Davis Family Inner Circle. I stared at it. My family had a group chat? Of course they did, and I had never been in it. I was in the Davis news chat, which was mostly Dad posting weather warnings and Mom sending chain letters. But this was different. My thumb hovered over the chat. It must have been a mistake. Mom probably meant to add a different contact or fat-fingered the screen while complaining about me. Messages began to populate, loading the history from the last few hours. They didn't realize I was there yet. Mom, 4:30 p.m. She kicked us out. Actually, physically ushered us out the door. Can you believe the arrogance? Blair, 4:32 p.m. I told the boys we were measuring for their beds. Now I have to tell them Auntie M is being mean? Great, thanks a lot. Dad, 4:45 p.m. Calm down. She's just overwhelmed. It is a big purchase. Buyer's remorse. Mom, 4:50 p.m. It is not remorse. Gordon, it is selfishness. But don't worry. Let Emery be mad for a bit. She needs to feel like she has control. Give her the cold shoulder for 2 days, then invite her to Sunday dinner. She'll come around. She always does. She'll come around. Those 3 words hit me harder than any slap. They didn't see me as a person with valid anger. They didn't see me as an adult woman who had just been violated. They saw me as a weather pattern. Oh, looks like a storm of Emery is passing through. Just button up the raincoat and wait for the sun to come out so we can use her resources again. I was a vending machine that occasionally got jammed. You just had to kick it a few times, shake it, and eventually, the candy would fall out. I took a screenshot, then another. I saved them to a hidden folder on my phone. Then, I saw the typing bubbles appear. Mom. Oh, I didn't mean to add her, Blair. Well, now she knows. Good. Maybe she will read this and realize how ridiculous she is being. Dad. Emery, honey, we were just discussing how to move past this. I didn't type back. I didn't leave the group. I just let the silence stretch, watching them scramble. 5 minutes later, a direct text from my father came through. Dad. Emery, let's not do this over text. Come over for Sunday dinner. Roast beef. Your favorite. We need to sit down as a family and clear the air. Mom is really hurt, but she is willing to listen if you are. She is willing to listen, as if I were the one on trial, as if I needed to plead my case for why I shouldn't be evicted from my own property. The old Emery, the one who wanted to be the good daughter, the one who craved that dopamine hit of parental approval, would have replied instantly. She would have said, "Okay, I'll be there. I'm sorry." She would have brought a dessert. She would have apologized for raising her voice. But the old Emery didn't own a $300,000 cottage. The old Emery didn't have a screenshot of her mother calling her a resource in all but name. I typed back. What time? Dad. 6. Don't be late. I wasn't going to make peace. I was going on a reconnaissance mission. I stood up and walked to my home office, the room Blair wanted to turn into a playroom for her chaotic children. I opened a drawer and dug past the highlighters and staples until I found it. It was a black ballpoint pen. Sleek, silver trim, indistinguishable from a standard office pen. I had bought it 2 years ago when I suspected a mechanic was ripping me off, but I had never used it. I clicked the top. A tiny, almost invisible blue light blinked once near the clip, then vanished. Recording. I spoke to the empty room. Testing. 1, 2, 3. My name is Emery Davis, and I am the sole owner of 42 Oakwood Drive. I played it back. The audio was crisp, clear. I checked the laws for our state online just to be sure. One-party consent. As long as I was a participant in the conversation, I could record it without telling them. I slipped the pen into my purse, right next to the new set of house keys I had paid a locksmith $150 to change an hour ago. Sunday dinner wasn't going to be a meal, it was going to be a deposition. And this time, when they tried to rewrite reality, I would have the transcript. The dining room table was set with the precision of a surgical tray. My mother had used the good china, the set usually reserved for Thanksgiving and visits from the pastor. But the atmosphere was devoid of celebration. It felt less like a Sunday dinner and more like a tribunal. I sat on one side of the mahogany table, my back to the hallway, isolated. Across from me, forming a united front, sat my father, Gordon, my mother, Maris, and my sister, Blair. They had positioned themselves shoulder to shoulder, a phalanx of judgment blocking the light from the bay window. I reached into my purse, ostensibly to check my phone, and clicked the silver pen. A tiny, imperceptible vibration confirmed it was active. I placed it next to my water glass, the camera lens facing the trio. "Roast beef," Mom said, placing a platter in the center of the table. "Medium rare, just how you like it." "Emery." The tone was sickeningly sweet, the kind of voice one uses to coax a stray dog into a cage. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. I didn't pick up my fork. Gordon cleared his throat. It was the sound of a gavel banging. He reached under his chair and produced a thick, navy blue folder. He didn't hand it to me. He slid it across the polished wood until it hit my placemat. "We have been doing some thinking," he began, clasping his hands on the table. "Since you were so emotional the other day, we realized we needed to step in and help you manage this transition." I opened the folder. It wasn't about my house. It was a stack of real estate listings. "What is this?" I asked. "Options," Gordon said. "Better options. Look at the first one. It is a 5-bedroom colonial. Brick front. It is only 10 minutes from the elementary school. Perfect for the boys. And look at the backyard. Almost an acre. You wouldn't have to worry about the neighbors complaining about noise." I stared at the listing. The price was nearly double what I had paid for my cottage. "I already bought a house, Dad," I said slowly. "I have a mortgage. I have keys. I am unpacked." "We handled that," Mom interjected, pouring gravy over Blair's potatoes. "I spoke to a loan officer at the bank yesterday, a lovely woman named Sharon. I explained the situation, that you had made a hasty decision without family consultation, and she said that if we act fast, we might be able to transfer the equity or secure a bridge loan if you sell the cottage immediately. The market is hot. Emery, you could flip it." My blood ran cold. "You called my bank? You pretended to be me?" "I didn't pretend to be you," Mom said, looking offended. "I said I was your mother. I was inquiring on your behalf." Sharon understood completely. She agreed that a single woman has no business managing a property with that much maintenance. She said a condo might be better for you. I looked at Blair. She was busy circling something on the third page of the listings with a red marker. "And," Blair said around a mouthful of beef, "I was looking at your furniture. That gray sofa is way too stiff for a playroom. I listed it on Marketplace this morning. I got an offer for $400. You should take it. We can use that money to buy beanbags for the kids." "You listed my sofa?" I asked, my voice rising. "Blair, that is my property. You cannot sell my things." "I am helping you declutter," Blair shot back. "You are going to have to downsize anyway if you move into the garage apartment or well. Dad found a nice studio downtown that's very affordable. If you take that, we can just move straight into the cottage, and we won't have to buy the big colonial. It saves everyone money." The level of delusion was breathtaking. They weren't just asking for my house. They were actively dismantling my life to fit their narrative. They had constructed a reality where I had already agreed to this. "I am not moving," I said. "I am not selling. And Blair, if you sell my sofa, I will file a police report for theft." The table went silent. Gordon's face turned a shade of purple I associated with his high blood pressure medication. "Police?" Gordon spat the word out. You would call the police on your sister? Over a couch? Over my life, Dad, I said. Gordon leaned forward. Let me explain something to you. Emery, you live in a community. People talk. Everyone knows the Davises stick together. Everyone knows we support each other. If you go around parading this selfishness, living in a house meant for a family while your sister struggles in a rental, what do you think people will say? You want to be the pariah? You want to be the spinster who chose quartz countertops over her own nephews? I don't care what they say. I lied. I cared. But I cared about my survival more. Well, you should, Gordon said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, conspiratorial whisper. Because character matters, Emery, especially in your line of work. I froze. What does my work have to do with this? Gordon smiled, a tight, grim expression that didn't reach his eyes. I ran into Gary from your office at the hardware store this morning. Nice fellow. We got to talking. I told him you might be needing some flexibility in your schedule next week because of the move. The air left the room. Gary was my direct supervisor. You told my boss I was moving? I told him you were helping family, Gordon corrected. I told him you might be a bit distracted because you were doing the right thing and helping your sister get settled into her new place. He was very understanding. He said family comes first. He even said he'd look at shifting your big presentation to next month so you wouldn't be stressed. My hands shook beneath the table. That presentation was my ticket to a promotion. I had been working on it for 6 months. Moving it would look like I couldn't handle the pressure. It would look like I was flaky. You sabotaged my career, I whispered. You went to my boss and lied to him to force me to give up my house. I smoothed the road. Gordon slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. I am trying to help you do what is right because you are too stubborn to see it yourself. You are going to sign the transfer papers. Blair is going to take the house, and you are going to thank us for taking this burden off your shoulders. Blair nodded, looking smug. Ideally by Wednesday. The lease on our apartment is up on the 1st, and I don't want to pay another month. I looked at them, really looked at them. For years. I thought they just didn't understand me. I thought they were just a bit old-fashioned, a bit overbearing. But this wasn't love. This wasn't even misguided concern. This was consumption. They were parasites, and I was the host. They didn't care if I lost my job. They didn't care if I lost my home. As long as Blair was comfortable, I could burn. I stood up. The chair legs scraped loudly against the hardwood floor, a harsh sound that cut through the tension. Where are you going? Mom asked, her fork hovering halfway to her mouth. We haven't had dessert. I made apple pie. I picked up my purse. I made sure the silver pen was securely clipped to the inside pocket. No, I said. No what? Gordon asked, his eyes narrowing. No to the house. No to the studio apartment. No to the moving truck. No to all of it. Sit down, Emery, Gordon commanded. We are not finished. I am, I said. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, the explosion happened. You walk out that door, and you are done, Gordon roared. Don't expect us to save you when you fail. Don't come crying to us when you are lonely and miserable in that big empty house. You are being a brat, Blair screamed. You are ruining everything. Mom, make her stop. Emery, come back here, Mom wailed. Think of the family. Think of your nephews. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I walked out the front door, the same door I had walked through 1,000 times as a child, desperate for their approval. This time, I walked through it desperate for air. I got into my car, my hands shaking so hard I had to use 2 hands to insert the key into the ignition. I drove. I didn't drive fast. I drove with the precise, terrified caution of someone carrying a bomb. When I pulled into my driveway, the house was dark. I walked to the front door. I unlocked the deadbolt, then the handle lock. Then I stepped inside and threw the deadbolt again. I stood in the foyer, breathing in the scent of my candle, the one I had bought for $45. I walked to the door and checked the lock again. I tested the handle. It held. For the first time, I didn't look at the walls and see paint colors or potential furniture arrangements. I looked at the solid oak door, the reinforced jamb, the heavy brass hardware. Gordon was right about one thing. This wasn't just a home anymore. I wasn't standing in a cottage. I was standing in a fortress, and the siege had just begun. The digital fallout was instantaneous. By the time I had double-locked my front door and collapsed onto the unboxing debris in my living room, the notification light on my phone was blinking with a manic, strobe-like rhythm. I made the mistake of looking. Blair had not wasted a second. She had posted a photo of her boys sleeping on a mattress on the floor. A mattress I knew for a fact they only used for camping nights in the living room, not their actual beds. The caption was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive martyrdom. It breaks a mother's heart to see her babies without enough space to grow. Especially when family turns their back on family. Some people think a big empty house is more important than flesh and blood. Please pray for us as we navigate this betrayal. We will find a home eventually, even if we have to do it alone. The comments were a scrolling wall of sympathy and judgment. Oh, honey, that is awful. Who would do that? Karma never misses an address. Blair, stay strong. Then came the direct messages. The first one that made me physically recoil was from Mrs. Gable, my third-grade teacher, a woman who had once given me a gold star for sharing my lunch. Emery, I saw your sister's post. I am confused. Why does a single person need a 3-bedroom home? Surely you can find it in your heart to help them. Ambition is fine, but not at the expense of kindness. I didn't reply. I blocked her. It felt like cutting off a limb, severing a tie to the community I had grown up in. But I did it. The virtual siege was followed immediately by a physical one. At 8 o'clock, a heavy fist pounded on my door. I checked the peephole. It was Mr. Henderson, my father's golfing buddy and the town's insurance agent. He stood on my porch with his hands on his hips, radiating righteous indignation. "Emery," he shouted, his voice muffled by the solid oak. "I know you are in there. Your dad called me. Open up. We need to talk about this lease transfer." I stood in the dark hallway, my back pressed against the wall. I didn't open the door. I didn't turn on the porch light. "Go away. Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice loud and flat. "Don't be disrespectful," he barked back. "Gordon is worried sick. He says you are having a breakdown. Just sign the papers. Emery, it is for the best. I am calling the police in 30 seconds if you do not leave my property," I said. There was a silence on the other side, then a scoff, then the sound of heavy boots retreating down the gravel path. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, watching the shadows of tree branches scratch against the windows like skeletal fingers trying to pry the glass open. Monday morning brought a new kind of horror, administrative violence. I was at my desk at work, trying to focus on a spreadsheet, when I realized I hadn't received an alert for my mortgage payment withdrawal. I logged into my banking app. The transaction was pending, but something looked wrong with the profile settings. I called the bank immediately. "Thank you for holding, Ms. Davis," the representative chirped. "I see here that the address change was processed successfully yesterday morning." My grip on the phone tightened. "What address change?" "The request to forward all physical mail and statements to the address on Maple Street," she said. "The notes say, let me see, yes. Your mother called. She provided your social security number and said you were having issues with mail theft at the new property, so we should route everything to your parents' house for safety." The air in my office seemed to vanish. "I did not authorize that. My mother is not on this account." "Well, she verified your identity details," the representative said, sounding defensive. "She verified them because she has my birth certificate in a safe," I snapped. "Reverse it, immediately, and put a verbal password on the account. If anyone calls, anyone, and does not say the word fortress, you hang up." I hung up and stared at the screen. They weren't just trying to guilt me, they were trying to erase me. If my mail went to them, they could intercept my bills, my HOA notices, my tax documents. They could control the narrative of my financial life, As if summoned by the thought, my work email pinged. Subject: Notice of violation. Oakwood Drive, HOA. I opened it, my heart hammering against my ribs. Dear Ms. Davis, we have received a formal complaint regarding the operation of an unauthorized commercial business from your residence. Multiple reports indicate you are using the property as a short-term rental facility and storage unit for retail inventory. Please submit proof of residency and a signed affidavit stating the home is for personal use only within 48 hours to avoid fines. I laughed. It was a dry, hysterical sound. Commercial business, storage unit. My father had called the Homeowners Association. He knew the bylaws better than anyone. He was trying to bury me in paperwork, to make the house such a legal headache that I would surrender it just to make the harassment stop. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went cold. I spent the next 3 hours not doing my job, but building my defenses. I systematized my survival. First, I changed every password: email, banking, social media, utilities. I generated random strings of 20 characters that even I wouldn't remember without a manager. Second, I enabled two-factor authentication on everything, linking it to an authenticator app, not my phone number, just in case they tried to port my SIM card. Third, I bought a Ring camera for the front door and 2 motion sensor floodlights for the backyard. I paid for expedited shipping. At lunchtime, I walked to the break room kitchen to get water. On the counter sat a loaf of banana bread wrapped in foil with a sticky note attached. Emery, I am so sorry. I didn't know your dad was digging for info when I mentioned you were moving in. I thought he was just a proud papa. I feel terrible. Sarah, I touched the foil. Sarah was the receptionist. Dad must have charmed her while waiting for me in the lobby last week. I took the bread back to my desk. I didn't eat it, but I kept it there. It was a reminder that not everyone was against me. Some people were just pawns, like I used to be. By 5 o'clock, I felt like I had lived a decade. I drove home in silence, scanning the rearview mirror every few minutes to see if I was being followed. When I turned onto Oakwood Drive, the sun was setting, casting long, bruised purple shadows across the street. My heart stopped. There was a car in my driveway. It was a white SUV, Blair's SUV. It was parked right up against the garage door. Aggressively close. I didn't pull in. I killed my headlights and coasted to a stop 3 houses down. Hidden behind a neighbor's hedges, I watched. The SUV was empty. I looked at the house. The living room blinds were drawn, but I could see a silhouette moving behind them, a distinct, pacing shadow. They were inside. My mind raced. How? I had changed the locks. I had the only key. Then I remembered the garage, the side door to the garage. I hadn't changed that lock yet. I had forgotten. It was a standard builder-grade lock. Dad could pick that with a credit card in 10 seconds. The old Emery would have stormed in there. She would have screamed. She would have demanded they leave. And they would have gaslit her. They would have said they were just dropping off a housewarming gift. They would have said I was crazy. I looked at the phone in my hand. I dialed 3 numbers. 911. What is your emergency? My name is Emery Davis, I said, my voice frighteningly calm. I am at 42 Oakwood Drive. There's a strange vehicle in my driveway and intruders inside my home. I am a single woman living alone. I am afraid for my safety. Are you in a safe location, ma'am? I am in my car down the street. Officers are on their way. I hung up and watched the house. The shadow in the window stopped pacing. It seemed to be looking out, waiting for me to come home so the ambush could begin. They were waiting for a daughter. They were about to meet the law. The blue and red lights of the patrol cruiser did not look like safety to me. They looked like a fracture in the reality of my quiet suburban street. 2 uniformed officers stood on my front porch, their hands resting near their belts, while the front door of my cottage stood wide open. I walked up the driveway, my shoes crunching on the gravel. I kept my hands visible. I kept my breathing shallow. I was not the hysterical daughter. I was the homeowner. Ma'am, do you live here? The taller officer asked, turning toward me. I am the owner, I said. I handed him my driver's license and the folded copy of the deed I had started carrying in my glove compartment like a weapon. I called you. There are intruders in my home. Before the officer could respond, my mother stepped out onto the porch. She was holding a dish towel. My dish towel. She looked at the police, then at me, with an expression of bewildered hurt that was so perfectly calibrated it deserved an award. "Oh, thank heavens you are here, officer," Maris said, her voice trembling just enough to sound fragile. "My daughter, she is having a bit of an episode. We just came over to make sure she was eating properly. We let ourselves in to start dinner, and she calls the police? Can you believe it?" Blair appeared behind her, holding her phone up, recording. "Emery, stop embarrassing us. The neighbors are watching." The second officer, a younger man, looked at me with softening eyes. "Ma'am, if this is a family dispute, we usually suggest you resolve it civilly. It seems they have a key?" "They do not have a key," I said. My voice was ice. "I changed the locks yesterday. They entered through the garage side door, which I was scheduled to change tomorrow. They do not have permission to be here. I have asked them to leave repeatedly. This is criminal trespass." "We are family!" Blair shouted, stepping past the threshold. "You can't trespass in your own sister's house." "Officer," I said, ignoring Blair entirely. I pulled out my phone and opened the app for the motion sensor floodlight camera I had installed in the backyard just hours ago. "Here is the footage from 6:15 this evening. You can see them trying the back door, then forcing the garage keypad. They didn't just walk in, they broke in." I held the screen up. The grainy black and white video showed Maris and Blair not looking like concerned relatives, but like prowlers. Blair was boosting Maris up to look through a window. Maris was jamming something into the keypad. The tall officer watched the video. His posture shifted. He was no longer looking at a family squabble. He was looking at evidence. "Ma'am," the officer said to Maris, his voice dropping an octave, becoming authoritative, "I need you to step off the porch, now." "But this is ridiculous," Maris sputtered, dropping the dish towel. "We are just—" "Step off the porch," he repeated. "You do not live here. The homeowner wants you gone. If you do not leave immediately, I will have to place you under arrest for trespassing." Maris froze. Her eyes darted to the house across the street, where Mrs. Higgins was peering through her blinds. The shame hit her harder than the threat of handcuffs. In Maris's world, being arrested was bad, but being seen being arrested was fatal. "You are making a mistake, Emery," Maris hissed, stepping down the stairs, her face pale with rage. "Do you know what people will think? Calling the cops on your own mother? You are destroying this family's name." I looked at her, really looked at her. For 29 years, that threat had ruled my life. What will people think? It was the cage she had built to keep me docile. "I don't care what they think anymore," I said. "I care that you are in my house." Maris recoiled as if I had slapped her. She grabbed Blair's arm, and they marched toward Blair's SUV, heads down, muttering curses that I was sure would be retold as prayers in their version of the story. The officers waited until the SUV backed out of the driveway and sped off. "We will file a report, Ms. Davis," the tall officer said. "If they return, call us immediately. Get that garage lock changed tonight." "I will," I said, when they left. The silence that descended on the street was heavy. I saw Mrs. Higgins' curtains twitch. I didn't look away. I stared right at her window until the curtains fell back into place. I wasn't hiding anymore. I went inside and dragged my heavy tool chest to the garage door. I screwed a heavy-duty slide bolt into the frame. It was ugly, industrial, and effective. Then, I sat on my kitchen floor and dialed a number I hadn't called in 2 years. "Kellen Price?" A deep voice answered on the second ring. "It is Emery," I said. "I need a lawyer, a mean one." Kellen listened for 10 minutes without interrupting. He was an old friend from college, a guy who had clawed his way up from poverty just like I had tried to. Except he chose litigation while I chose corporate management. "Okay," Kellen said. the sound of a keyboard clacking in the background. "Here is what we are going to do. We are bypassing the friendly stage. I am drafting a cease and desist letter tonight. It will state that any further contact, calls, texts, visits, third-party messages, will be considered harassment. We are also going to outline the financial abuse regarding the bank account access attempt. Will it stop them?" I asked. "No," Kellen said bluntly, "but it lays the foundation. Right now, it is a family drama. We need to turn it into a paper trail. If they violate the cease and desist, we go for a restraining order. But Emery, you have to hold the line. No answering their calls. No explaining yourself. You are a gray rock. You are boring, impenetrable, and silent." "I can do that," I said. "Good. And get more cameras," he added. "People like this don't stop because of a piece of paper. They stop when they hit a wall." The next 3 days were a masterclass in psychological warfare. I didn't block their numbers. Kellen advised against it so we could collect evidence. I just muted them. My phone became a graveyard of desperate notifications. 32 missed calls from Mom, 14 voicemails from Dad, a string of texts from Blair calling me a monster and a thief. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I forwarded them directly to Kellen. I didn't read the texts. I screenshotted them and archived them. Every time I felt the urge to reply, to scream, to defend myself, I just said one word aloud to the empty room. No. 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 It became my mantra. It was shorter than an explanation and stronger than an apology. On Thursday, I was reviewing the footage from the Ring doorbell I had finally installed on the front frame. The app flagged a movement event from Tuesday morning. 2 days after the police incident, while I was at work, I clicked play. Maris walked up to my front door. She looked over her shoulder, checking the street. She didn't ring the bell. She reached into her purse and pulled out a key ring. It wasn't just the key she had stolen the first week. It was a heavy ring with at least 5 or 6 different keys on it. She tried the first one. It didn't turn, because I had changed the locks. She frowned, swapped it for the second key, tried again, then the third, then the fourth. I paused the video, zooming in on her hands. She hadn't just made a copy. She had made a set. She had likely gone to different hardware stores. Or perhaps she had a locksmith friend. Trying to guess the bidding or holding on to old keys from previous owners she might have known. Or maybe, more terrifyingly, she had made copies of the new key I had on my ring during a visit I didn't remember, labeling them, preparing for the day she would need to bypass my boundaries. She stood there for 4 minutes, cycling through keys, her face twisted in frustration. When none worked, she kicked the bottom of the door, a sharp, violent motion, and stormed off. She wasn't visiting. She was testing the perimeter. She was probing for weaknesses. I saved the video. I opened my laptop and created a new folder on my desktop. I didn't name it Family. I didn't name it House. I typed in the file name, Timeline. I dragged the video file into it. It sat there next to the PDF of the cease and desist letter and the audio recording of the dinner table ambush. I looked at the folder. It wasn't a collection of memories. It was an arsenal, and I had a feeling I was going to need every single bullet. The sanctuary of my office was supposed to be the one place they couldn't touch. I had blocked their numbers, filtered their emails, and instructed the receptionist, Sarah, to screen my calls. But I had underestimated their desperation. It was 10:15 on a Tuesday morning. I was in the middle of a strategy meeting with Marcus, my department head, reviewing the quarterly projections. The room was quiet, professional, a world of logic and clear expectations that I craved. Suddenly, the glass door of the conference room rattled. I looked up. Through the frosted pane, I saw distorted shapes arguing with the security guard at the front desk. The voices were muffled but unmistakably familiar. "It is an emergency. Her sister is dying. You let us in right now." My blood ran cold. That was my mother's voice, pitched to a hysterical shriek that she usually reserved for when a cashier wouldn't accept an expired coupon. Marcus stopped speaking. "Is that for you, Emery?" Before I could answer, the door burst open. The security guard, a heavy-set man named Arthur, who was usually jovial, looked flustered as he tried to block my father's path. Gordon shoved past him, face red, with Maris trailing behind, clutching her chest theatrically. "Emery!" Maris screamed, dropping her purse on the floor. "You have to come now. It is Blair. There was an accident. The car— oh God, the car is totaled. She is in the hospital. They don't know if she will make it." The room went deadly silent. My colleagues looked at me with horrified sympathy. Marcus stood up immediately. "Go, Emery, go. Do whatever you need." For a split second, the old panic seized me. My sister, my baby sister. My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached for my bag, my instinct to protect kicking in just as it had been programmed to do for 29 years. But then I saw my father's eyes. He wasn't crying. He wasn't looking at me with grief. He was scanning the room, checking to see if the audience was captivated. He looked satisfied. I stopped. My hand hovered over my laptop. "Which hospital?" I asked. My voice was calm, cutting through the chaotic energy they had brought into the room. "General," Gordon barked. "Why are you asking questions? We need to go. I am driving. Come on." He reached out to grab my arm. I took a step back. "Wait 1 second," I said. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a sudden, violent suspicion. I unlocked the screen and opened Instagram. I tapped on Blair's icon at the top of the feed. The colorful ring indicated a new story. Posted 2 minutes ago, I watched the video. It was a close-up of a chicken nugget being dipped into sauce. The camera panned up to show her youngest son's face smeared with ketchup. Blair's voice narrated from behind the camera. "Lunch date with my little man. He is so picky today. Send wine. Mom, life. There was no car crash. There was no hospital. She was at a fast food restaurant 3 miles away." I turned the phone around so Marcus and my parents could see the screen. The video looped, Blair's cheerful voice echoing in the silent conference room. "She seems to be enjoying her lunch for someone in critical condition," I said. The color drained from Maris's face. She looked at the phone, then at me, then at the floor. The performance shattered instantly. "Well," Maris stammered, recovering with terrifying speed. "She was almost in an accident earlier. It was a close call. We just wanted to get you out of here so we could talk without you running away." "You lied," I said. "You came to my place of business, interrupted a meeting, and lied about a family tragedy to force me into a car with you." "We need to talk about the house," Gordon shouted. Abandoning the ruse entirely, "You are blocking our calls. You are being unreasonable. We are not leaving until you sign those transfer papers." Marcus stepped forward. He was a foot shorter than my father, but he carried the weight of a man who managed multi-million-dollar portfolios. "Mr. Davis," Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous, "you are disrupting my business." "This is a family matter," Gordon sneered. "This is a workplace," Marcus corrected. "Emery, do you want these people here?" I looked at them. My father, veins bulging in his neck, my mother, twisting her hands, looking for a new angle to play. They looked small. They looked pathetic. "No," I said clearly. "I do not know these people. They are harassers. Please remove them." "Arthur," Marcus nodded to the guard. Arthur stepped forward, his face hard. "Sir, ma'am, you need to leave, now, or I'm calling the city police." "You can't do this," Maris wailed, as Arthur took her elbow. "She is my daughter. Emery, tell them who we are." "I have no family here," I said, turning my back to them to face my laptop. I heard the scuffle of shoes, the heavy doors swinging shut, and the fading sound of my father threatening to sue the company. When the silence returned, the room was thick with tension. "I am so sorry, Marcus," I said, keeping my eyes on the spreadsheet to hide the tears of rage stinging my eyes. "I will handle this. It won't happen again." "Take the rest of the day, Emery," Marcus said gently. "And for the record, you handled that perfectly." I walked out of the building with my head high, but inside, I was vibrating. The system, corporate security, a boss I had only known for 2 years, had protected me instantly. My family had only ever endangered me. By the time I got home, the war had shifted fronts again. My phone pinged with a Google alert I had set up for my own name. A paranoid measure Kellen had suggested. New result. Help a single mom. Go fund space. I clicked the link. It was a fundraising page created by Blair Davis. The title? Help My Kids Have a Home After Family Betrayal. The photo at the top was a picture of me. It was a professional headshot I had used for my LinkedIn profile, superimposed next to a picture of her kids crying. A photo I knew she had staged because the tears looked suspiciously like eye drops. The text was a masterpiece of fiction. My wealthy sister bought a massive house promising to share it with my struggling family, then kicked us out on the street the day we moved in. She hates children and chose her vanity over her nephew's safety. We are currently homeless. Please help us raise $5,000 for a deposit on a safe apartment. She hadn't named me in the text, but she used my full name in the photo caption. The donations were already rolling in. $50 here, $20 there. Comments called me a monster and a narcissist. My hands didn't shake this time. I walked to my scanner. I pulled out the copyright release form for that headshot. I had paid the photographer extra to own the rights to the image myself. I logged into the fundraising platform's legal portal. I didn't write a passionate defense. I didn't comment on the lies. I simply filled out a Digital Millennium Copyright Act takedown notice. Reason: unauthorized use of copyrighted image owned by the complainant, used for fraudulent financial solicitation. I attached the release form. I hit submit. 20 minutes later, I refreshed the page. Error 404. This campaign has been removed. It was clean. It was surgical. It was the first time I realized that the law didn't care about their tears. It cared about paperwork. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my patio. Watching the sun set over the trees, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. From Gordon. I didn't listen to it immediately. I waited until I had opened my recording app on my laptop to capture it externally. Just in case, I pressed play. You think you are so smart. Gordon's voice was slurred, thick with whiskey and rage. You think you can embarrass us at your job? You think you can shut down your sister's page? You are nothing. You are a little girl playing house. And guess what? We already arranged everything. We told the landlord at the apartment that Blair was moving out on Sunday. We told the school the boys are transferring to your district next week. We did it weeks ago. So you better fix this. Emery, they are moving in whether you like it or not. Because we burned the bridge behind us. You hear me? You are going to take them because you have no choice. The message ended with a violent clatter. As if he had thrown the phone, I sat there, the glass of wine cold in my hand. We told the landlord weeks ago. They hadn't just assumed. They had executed a plan to make Blair homeless voluntarily, calculating that if she had nowhere to go, I would be forced to take her in. They had weaponized her children's stability to blackmail me. I saved the file. I named it the Silver Bullet. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was evidence of premeditated endangerment of minors. I was about to close my laptop when a new email popped up in my work inbox. Subject: Internal transfer opportunity. Regional lead. I opened it. It was from the Vice President of Operations. Dear Emery, following Marcus's strong recommendation regarding your resilience and performance, we would like to discuss a potential opening. We are launching a new branch in Charleston. We need a lead who is focused, unshakable, and looking for a fresh start. Relocation package included. Let us know if you are interested. Charleston, 600 miles away. A city of water and history, far from the suffocating orbit of the Davis family. I looked at the timeline folder on my desktop. Then I looked at the email. For the first time in weeks, the knot in my chest loosened. I wasn't just fighting to keep a house anymore. I was fighting to clear the rubble so I could build a life. I hit reply. I am interested. When can we talk? The doorbell rang on a rainy Saturday afternoon, 3 days after the Go Fun Space. It wasn't the aggressive pounding of my father or the frantic stabbing of my sister. It was a single, polite chime. I checked the monitor. It was my mother, Maris. She stood alone on the porch, holding a Tupperware container and wearing a beige trench coat that was buttoned up to her chin. She looked smaller than usual, less like a general inspecting the troops and more like a weary traveler seeking shelter. I almost didn't open the door, but Kellen's advice echoed in my head. Let them dig the hole, just record the shovel hitting the dirt. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door, leaving the security chain engaged. What do you want? I asked through the 3-inch gap. Maris offered a tight, hopeful smile. She lifted the container. I made peace offerings, lemon bars, your favorite. I stared at the plastic box. I hate lemon bars. Mom, Blair loves lemon bars. I am allergic to citrus zest. You know this. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then reassembled itself into practiced oblivion. Oh, stop it. You used to love them when you were little. Regardless, I didn't come to argue about baked goods. I came to talk. Just talk. No yelling. No Gordon. Just mother and daughter. I looked past her to the street. No SUV. No ambush. Just her. 5 minutes, I said. I slid the chain off and opened the door. She walked in, shaking the rain off her umbrella. She looked around my entryway, her eyes instantly cataloging the changes. The new security panel on the wall, the absence of the family photo on the mantel, the camera blinking in the corner of the ceiling. You have turned this place into a bunker, she said, her voice dripping with a mix of pity and disdain. It is not healthy, Emery. Living like you are under siege. I am under siege, I replied, leaning against the kitchen island, keeping distance between us. You are the ones storming the walls, she sighed. Placing the unwanted lemon bars on the counter, she unbuttoned her coat, but didn't take it off, as if ready to flee or attack at a moment's notice. Look, your father, he gets carried away, she began, her tone soft, almost conspiratorial. He worries about Blair. We all do. But maybe we approached this wrong. We pushed too hard. I said nothing. I just waited. So, she continued, smoothing the tablecloth I hadn't put there. I have been thinking, compromise, that is what families do, right? We meet in the middle. What is the middle, Mom? I asked. Half of my house? Or just the garage? No, she waved a hand dismissively. I was thinking this house is clearly bad luck now, too much bad blood. So, what if you sell it? The market is up. You make a profit. Then, we pool that money with what Dad and I have saved, and we buy a big duplex, or a house with an in-law suite. You have your privacy. Blair has hers. But we are all under one roof. Safe. Together. I watched her face. She truly believed this was a generous offer. She was proposing that I liquidate my only asset to fund a commune where I would inevitably be the servant. I am not interested in living with Blair, I said. I am not interested in living with you. I even found a place, she rushed on, ignoring my refusal. It is on Chestnut Street, 5 bedrooms. I spoke to the realtor yesterday. I told him we were very interested and that the primary buyer, you, would be calling him on Monday to put down a deposit. My stomach clenched. You told a realtor I was buying a house on Chestnut Street? I had to, she insisted, her eyes widening with feigned innocence. It is a hot market. Emery, if you don't move fast, someone else grabs it. I was just holding your place in line. I used your name because, well, your credit is the best in the family. It just makes sense. You committed fraud, I said. Again, you are impersonating me to enter into financial negotiations. I am helping you, she snapped, the mask slipping. Why do you have to make everything a legal issue? We are trying to save you from being alone. I like being alone, I said. Maris laughed, a harsh, dry sound. No one likes being alone. Emery, and let's be honest, How long do you think you can keep this up? This independence? You think you bought this house? We all know where the down payment really came from. I froze. Excuse me? The family fund, she said, her voice dropping to a low, threatening register. The money your grandmother left. We know you used it. Grandma left that money to me, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. Specifically to me, in her will, for my education or a home. It was never a family fund. It was my inheritance. Well, Maris picked at a piece of lint on her coat. Gordon thinks differently. He thinks there was ambiguity in the language. If we were to challenge the will, argue that you manipulated an elderly woman, or that the intent was for the whole family, it could tie up your assets for years. You wouldn't be able to pay the mortgage on this place if your accounts were frozen. Would you? There it was, the velvet-covered hammer. They weren't just going to harass me. They were threatening to sue me for my own inheritance, to bleed me dry in legal fees until I collapsed. You would sue your own daughter over money? I asked quietly. We would do what is necessary to ensure fairness, she corrected. Blair deserves her share. You have taken everything, the good grades, the good job, the money. It is time to balance the scales. I looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see my mother. I saw a stranger. A desperate, vindictive stranger who would burn down a village to keep her favorite child warm. You are right, I said. Maris blinked. I am? Yes, it is time to balance the scales. I turned around and walked into my home office. I could hear Maris shifting in the kitchen, probably smiling, thinking she had finally broken me, thinking the threat of poverty had done what guilt could not. I opened my desk drawer. I bypassed the folder of real estate documents. I reached for a thick, cream-colored envelope that had arrived via courier yesterday. I walked back into the kitchen and placed the envelope on the island between us. What is this? She asked, eyeing it suspiciously. The deed? Open it, I said. She tore it open, her greedy fingers trembling slightly. She pulled out the heavy cardstock. Her eyes scanned the text. Offer of employment. Senior Regional Director, Charleston Branch. Start date, March 1st. She looked up, confused. Charleston? That is in South Carolina. It is, I said. I accepted the offer this morning. I am moving. A slow, terrifying smile spread across Maris's face. She let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for years. Oh, Emery, she breathed, clutching the letter to her chest. Oh, thank God. You are leaving. You are taking the job. That means well. Obviously you can't keep this house if you are 600 miles away, so we can just take over the payments. Blair can move in next week, and we will handle the transfer quietly. You go have your big career, and the family stays here. It is perfect. You finally did the right thing. She reached out to touch my hand, her eyes shining with victory. She thought I was fleeing. She thought I was abandoning the fortress so her golden child could move into the ruins. I pulled my hand away. You didn't finish reading, I said. What? I am not transferring the house to you, I said, my voice clear and cold. I listed it this morning. An investor made a cash offer an hour ago. It is 10% over asking price. I signed the contract before you rang the doorbell. Maris dropped the letter. It fluttered to the floor like a dead bird. You sold it? She whispered. To a stranger? Yes, I said. Closing is in 10 days. You have no claim to it. You have no time to file an injunction. It is done. But the money, she stammered. The equity, we can use that for the duplex. The money is coming with me, I said. Every cent. It is going into a trust that you cannot touch, in a state where you do not live. Her face twisted. The color rose in her cheeks, violent and patchy. You can't do that. We made plans. Gordon told the landlord Blair was leaving. They have nowhere to go. That sounds like a poor management decision on Gordon's part, I said. You selfish little bitch, she screamed, lunging forward, her hands clawing at the air. I didn't flinch. I simply pointed to the black folder sitting on the counter, right next to the lemon bars. "Mom," I said sharply, "look at the folder." She stopped, panting, her hand hovering over the black plastic. "What is that?" she snarled. "That," I said, "is a timeline. It has the dates you stole my key, the video of you trying to break in, the audio of Dad threatening my boss, the screenshots of Blair's fraudulent fundraiser, and the voicemail Dad left me admitting he purposefully made Blair homeless to blackmail me." Maris stared at the folder. The rage in her eyes flickered, replaced by something I had never seen in her before: fear. "If you try to sue me for my inheritance," I continued, my voice dropping to a whisper, "or if you try to stop this sale, or if you ever show up at my workplace again, I will hand that folder to the district attorney. And I will not just sue you, I will press criminal charges for harassment, fraud, and attempted extortion." She looked at me. She looked at the camera in the corner. She looked at the lemon bars she had baked as a bribe. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "We are your family." "I am moving to Charleston," I said. "I am starting over. Whether I do it quietly, or whether I do it after testifying against you in court is entirely up to you." I walked to the door and held it open. The rain was coming down harder now, a gray sheet washing away the suburban veneer. "Get out of my house," I said. Maris grabbed her purse. She didn't look at me. She scurried past me, her trench coat flapping, shrinking under the weight of the reality she had just crashed into. She ran to her car. Not looking back, I closed the door. I locked it. I picked up the lemon bars and dropped them, unopened, into the trash. Then I picked up the folder. It felt heavy. It felt like armor. I was leaving. But I wasn't running away. I was moving forward. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for their permission to do it. The summons came via a group text to the entire extended family, a digital subpoena that appeared on my phone screen at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning. Emergency family meeting. Mom and Dad's house, 2 p.m. Everyone needs to be there to discuss the crisis Emery has caused. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I simply printed 3 copies of the file I had named The Truth, placed them in a stiff leather portfolio, and dressed in a navy blue suit I usually reserved for board interviews. I wasn't going to a family gathering. I was going to a sentencing hearing. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the defendant. When I pulled up to my parents' house, the driveway was already full. Uncle Mike's truck was there. Aunt Sarah's sedan was parked on the lawn. They had called in the cavalry. I walked into the house, the leather portfolio tucked under my arm. The living room had been rearranged. The coffee table was pushed aside, and the chairs were set up in a semicircle facing the fireplace, creating a makeshift stage. My parents and Blair sat in the center on the love seat. A tableau of tragedy. Blair held a wad of tissues, dabbing at dry eyes. Maris sat with her hand on Blair's knee, looking like a grieving mother. Gordon stood by the mantel, the patriarch ready to deliver a sermon on loyalty. Around them sat my aunts, uncles, and cousins. They looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, holding plates of cookies they were too anxious to eat. When I entered, the conversation died instantly. 20 pairs of eyes turned to me. Some held judgment, some held pity, all held the weight of the story they had been fed. "You came," Gordon said, his voice booming. "Good. Sit down. Emery." He pointed to a single wooden dining chair placed in the center of the room, facing the family. It was the accused's bench. I didn't sit. I remained standing near the doorway, keeping the exit clear. "I am comfortable standing," I said. "This family is in crisis," Gordon began, addressing the room but glaring at me. "We have always prided ourselves on supporting one another, but recently, one of us has decided that personal greed is more important than the safety of children. Emery has bought a house that is too big for her, while her sister is being forced onto the street, and when we tried to reason with her, she called the police on her own mother." A murmur went through the room. Aunt Sarah shook her head, looking at me with disappointment. "We called you here," Maris added, her voice trembling. Because we don't know what else to do. We are hoping that if Emery sees how much this hurts the family, she will do the right thing and sign the transfer papers. Blair let out a sob. A sharp, punctuated sound that echoed in the quiet room. I just don't know where my boys are going to sleep, she whispered, loud enough for the back row to hear. I watched them perform. It was a good show. Years of practice had gone into it. Are you finished? I asked. Gordon stepped forward. No, I am not finished. You are going to sign the papers today. Emery, in front of everyone, you are going to apologize, and you are going to fix this. I walked forward. I didn't look at Gordon. I looked at Uncle Mike, the most pragmatic of my relatives, a man who ran a hardware store and hated drama. Uncle Mike, I said, did Dad tell you why Blair is being forced onto the street? Because her lease is up, Mike grunted, and she can't find a place in time. And why can't she find a place? I asked. Because the market is tough, Maris interjected quickly. Emery, stop deflecting. The market isn't the problem, I said, my voice calm, projecting to the back of the room. The problem is that on January 15th, Dad called Blair's landlord and told him she was voluntarily vacating on March 1st. He did this without having a new lease signed. He did this specifically to create a crisis, so I would be forced to house her. That is a lie, Blair shrieked, jumping up. The tissues fell to the floor. I opened my portfolio. I pulled out a single sheet of paper, a transcript of the voicemail Gordon had left me, the one I had saved as the silver bullet. I have the recording on my phone if anyone wants to hear Dad's voice, I said. But I think the transcript is clear enough. Quote, we told the landlord she was moving out weeks ago. We burned the bridge behind us so you would have no choice. End quote. I handed the paper to Uncle Mike. He took it, his eyebrows knitting together as he read. Gordon's face turned a dangerous shade of red. That was private. You recorded me? Yes, I said. Just like I recorded Mom trying to break into my house. I pulled out my tablet from the portfolio. I tapped the screen and turned it around so the family could see. The video played. It showed Maris standing at my door, cycling through 6 different unauthorized keys. It showed her kicking the door. Then it cut to another clip. Blair standing on my porch with a locksmith. The audio from the video filled the room. Locksmith. Ma'am, I can't drill this lock unless you show me the deed or a utility bill with your name on it. Blair. It is my sister's house, but she is crazy. She locked me out. Just drill it. Locksmith. I can't do that. That is breaking and entering. I paused the video. The silence in the room was absolute. It wasn't the silence of awkwardness anymore. It was the silence of a worldview shattering. She wasn't visiting, I said to the room. She was trying to bypass the locks I paid to change. This isn't a family dispute. This is criminal trespassing. You are twisting everything, Maris cried, standing up to join Gordon. We were desperate. We were trying to help you manage a house you can't handle. I handled it just fine, I said. In fact, I handled it so well that I sold it. The air left the room. Blair stopped fake crying. Her mouth dropped open. What? Gordon whispered. I sold the house, I announced, my voice ringing clear. The closing is scheduled. The new owners take possession in 2 weeks, and I accepted a promotion in Charleston. I am moving next month. Did you sold our home? Blair screamed, her face contorting into ugly, genuine rage. Where are we supposed to go? You can stay right where you are, I said cold. In the apartment you currently have. Unless, of course, you really did cancel your lease to spite me. In which case, I suggest you ask Mom and Dad for their guest room, since they are the ones who orchestrated your homelessness. You can't leave, Maris shouted. You have responsibilities here. Who is going to help with the bills? Who is going to take care of us when we get old? Not me, I said. I reached into the portfolio again. I pulled out a stack of papers, clipped together. I walked over to Aunt Sarah and handed them to her. What is this? Sarah asked. That is a financial comparison, I said. It shows the tuition Dad paid for Blair's college versus the student loans I'm still paying off. It shows the down payment assistance he gave her for her cars versus the rent I paid to them when I lived at home after graduation. It shows the $20,000 I have loaned the family over the last 5 years, none of which has been repaid. Aunt Sarah flipped through the pages. Her eyes widened. "Gordon," she said, looking up at my father, "you told us Emery was the stingy one. You told us she never contributed." "She is ungrateful," Gordon roared, slamming his hand against the mantel. "She counts every penny. That is not how family works." "No," Uncle Mike said. Standing up, he held the transcript in one hand and looked at Gordon with a mixture of disgust and realization. "Family doesn't blacklist their own daughter at her job. Gordon, family doesn't try to break into her house. This is sick. Get out," Gordon screamed at Mike. "If you are on her side, get out." "I am not on anyone's side," Mike said, his voice low. "But I am looking at the facts, and the facts say you have been lying to us for years." The room began to shift. Cousins were whispering. Aunt Sarah was looking at Maris with cold eyes. The audience Gordon had assembled to stone me was now turning their rocks toward the stage. "How could you?" Sarah asked Maris. "You told me she abandoned you. You told me she was having a mental breakdown." "She is!" Maris shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Look at her. Look how cold she is. She doesn't care about anyone but herself." "I care about the truth," I said. "And the truth is, I am done being the bank account you abuse and the scapegoat you blame. I am leaving. I am taking my money, my career, and my life with me. You have Blair. You have the golden child. You should be happy." I turned to leave. I had said my piece. I had dropped the match, and the bridge was burning beautifully. "You walk out that door, and you get nothing," Gordon yelled. His voice was raw, desperate. He was losing control of the narrative, losing control of the room, losing control of me. I stopped at the threshold. "I already have everything. Dad, I have the job. I have the money from the house. I have my freedom. What could you possibly give me?" Gordon's face twisted. He looked at the relatives staring at him with judgment. He looked at Blair, sobbing for real now because her safety net was gone. He looked at me, the daughter who had finally outgrown his cage. And then he snapped. "You think that money is yours?" he spat, his voice dropping to a venomous hiss that carried across the room. "You think that house money belongs to you? You think Grandma left that inheritance to you?" "Gordon, stop," Maris warned, her eyes widening in sudden panic. She grabbed his arm. "Don't. No." Gordon shook her off. He glared at me with a hatred so pure it was almost blinding. "You are so proud of your little portfolio, but you don't know the first thing about where you come from. That inheritance wasn't a gift. Emery, it was a payment, and we have the papers to prove it belongs to the family trust. Not you. You are not walking away with a dime." "Grandma's will was clear," I said, frowning. "It was probated." "Grandma's will was a cover," Gordon sneered. "There is another document, one she signed before she got confused, and it says that everything, every single asset, goes to the head of the household." He pointed a finger at his own chest. "You didn't sell your house. Emery, you sold my asset, and I'm going to take every single penny of it back." I looked at him. He wasn't bluffing. He believed it, or he had constructed a lie so elaborate he had convinced himself it was true. "Show me," I said. "Oh, we will," Gordon promised, a cruel smile touching his lips. "We will show you in court, and when we are done, you won't just be homeless, you will be bankrupt." I looked at Maris. She wasn't smiling. She looked terrified. That was the tell. Gordon thought he had played an ace, but looking at my mother's pale face, I realized he hadn't just revealed a secret weapon. He had revealed a crime. "I will see you in court, then," I said. I walked out of the house, into the cool afternoon air. Behind me, the sound of shouting erupted, not at me, but at each other. The perfect family portrait had finally, irrevocably, caught fire. But as I walked to my car, Gordon's words echoed in my mind. There is another document. If that was true, then everything I had just fought for, the sale, the move, the new life, was hanging by a thread. I needed to call Kellen, immediately. You have the papers? I asked, my voice cutting through the chaotic murmurs of the living room. Show them, Gordon sneered, triumph gleaming in his eyes like a fever. He reached behind the framed portrait on the mantel, a hiding spot so overused it was almost insulting, and pulled out a folded, yellowing envelope. Your grandmother signed this 3 months before she died, Gordon announced, waving the document at the captive audience of aunts and uncles. It states clearly that all liquid assets, including the education fund, revert to the head of the household in the event of familial redistricting. That is a legal term. Emery, it means the money you used to buy that cottage was stolen from this family. From Blair. From me. Blair wiped her face, looking up at her father with renewed hope. So, we can take the house back? Legally? We can, Gordon declared. And we will, unless Emery signs the transfer right now. We file this with the probate court on Monday morning. You will lose the house, the money, and your reputation. The room fell silent. Aunt Sarah looked at me with worry. Uncle Mike looked skeptical but unsure. It was a compelling lie, delivered with the absolute confidence of a man who had believed his own fiction for decades. I didn't flinch. I didn't gasp. I simply reached into my leather portfolio and pulled out the last section. It was a single, crisp document bound in a blue legal cover. I was wondering when you would bring up the codicil of 2020, I said, my voice steady. You tried to file this with the county clerk 5 years ago. Didn't you, Dad? But they rejected it. Gordon froze. The envelope shook in his hand. How do you know that? He whispered. Because I hired a forensic document examiner last week, I said. Kellen, my lawyer, pulled the rejected filing from the public records archives. We compared the signature on your document to Grandma's actual signature from her notarized will, her checks, and her hospital admission forms. I walked over to Uncle Mike and handed him the blue-bound report. Read the conclusion, please, Uncle Mike, out loud. Mike adjusted his glasses. He looked at the report, then at Gordon, his face hardening. It says conclusion, high probability of simulation. The signature on the codicil shows signs of tracing and hesitation marks consistent with forgery. Furthermore, the witness signature belongs to a Mr. Arthur Miller, who passed away 3 years prior to the date of this document. A gasp went through the room. It sucked the air right out of Gordon's lungs. You forged it? Aunt Sarah stood up, her voice trembling. Gordon, you told us Mom changed her mind. You told us she wanted you to manage the money. You forged our mother's signature? I did what was necessary, Gordon shouted, backing away as if physically cornered. She was confused. She would have wanted me to have it. I am the patriarch. She wasn't confused, I said. She was protecting me from exactly this. I looked at Maris. She was sitting very still, her face the color of old ash. She knew. Of course she knew. She was the accomplice who had kept the secret while spending the allowance Gordon gave her from money that wasn't his. This is fraud, Gordon, Uncle Mike said, throwing the report onto the coffee table. This isn't just a family squabble. This is a felony. It doesn't matter, Blair screamed. Standing up, her hands balled into fists. Who cares about the paper? Emery has the money. She has the house. She needs to share it. Why is everyone looking at paper when my kids are homeless? Because, I said, looking at my sister, the only reason you are homeless is because they lied to use you as a weapon against me, and now that weapon has misfired. Just then, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a polite chime. It was 2 solid, authoritative knocks. Gordon looked at the door. Who is that? I believe that is for you, I said. Maris stood up, her legs shaking. She walked to the door and opened it. A man in a plain gray suit stood there. He held a thick stack of papers. "Gordon Davis? Maris Davis?" the man asked. "Yes," Maris whispered. "You have been served." He handed her the stack. She took it, the weight of it pulling her arm down. "What is this?" Gordon demanded, snatching the papers from her. "It is a temporary restraining order," I said, "and a civil lawsuit for fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and harassment. It also includes a formal petition to the probate court to reopen the estate audit based on the evidence of forgery." "You sued us?" Maris gasped, clutching her chest. "During a family meeting?" "I didn't sue you for revenge," I said. "I sued you to make sure you never open the door to my life again. The order is effective immediately. It means you cannot contact me. You cannot come to my workplace, and you certainly cannot come to my home. If you do, you go to jail. Not family jail, real jail." Blair looked at the papers, then at her parents. The realization finally hit her. There was no big house coming. There was no victory. There was only a mountain of legal fees and a potential criminal investigation looming over the people she relied on. "You ruined us," Blair whispered, looking at me with pure hatred. "You destroyed this family." "No," I said, picking up my portfolio. "I just turned on the lights. The ruin was already there." I turned to the rest of the room. My aunts, uncles, and cousins were staring at Gordon and Maris with a mixture of horror and betrayal. The good family mythology had shattered. They saw the forgery. They saw the manipulation. They saw the cruelty. "I am leaving now," I said to the room. "My house goes on the market tomorrow. I will be gone in 30 days. If anyone wants to say goodbye, you have my number. If you are on their side," I pointed to my parents, "lose it." I walked out the front door. I didn't look back at my father, who was crumbling onto the sofa, clutching the proof of his own crime. I didn't look back at my mother, who was weeping into her hands. I walked to my car, got in, and drove away. The house on Oakwood Drive sold in 4 days. It went for $50,000 over the asking price to a young couple who loved the quartz countertops. I didn't feel a pang of sadness when I handed over the keys. I felt like I was shedding a skin. I took the money, every single cent of it, and moved to Charleston. I bought a new house. It was smaller, older, with a wraparound porch and a view of the marsh. I put the deed in a trust with a name that had nothing to do with the Davis family. My address was unlisted. My phone number was new. The fallout back home was absolute. Uncle Mike refused to speak to Gordon. Aunt Sarah helped Blair find a small apartment, but made it clear that the days of enabling were over. Gordon and Maris were forced to sell their own house to pay for the legal defense against the fraud charges I had flagged to the state, charges I eventually allowed to settle quietly in exchange for a permanent lifetime no-contact order. They lost their standing in the church. They lost their reputation in the town. They were left with nothing but each other and the bitter story they told themselves about the ungrateful daughter who ran away. 1 year later, the air in Charleston smelled of salt and jasmine. I stood in my kitchen, a kitchen that was messy, full of laughter and the smell of shrimp boil. "Emery, pass the hot sauce," Marcus yelled from the patio. He had transferred down 3 months after I did. "Coming," I shouted back. I grabbed the bottle and walked out onto the porch. There were 10 people there, my neighbor, a 70-year-old artist who taught me how to garden, Kellen, who had flown down for the weekend to celebrate my 30th birthday, 2 new colleagues who had become my closest friends. There was no tension. No one was measuring the rooms. No one was asking for money. No one was demanding I shrink so they could expand. "Happy birthday to the woman who bought her own freedom," Kellen said, raising a beer. "To freedom," everyone echoed. I smiled, feeling the warmth of it. Real warmth, not the stifling heat of obligation. This was my family. The family I chose. The family that checked on me because they loved me, not because they needed something. My phone buzzed on the railing. I glanced at it. Unknown caller. The area code was from my hometown. The old Emery would have wondered. She would have worried. She would have thought, maybe something is wrong. Maybe they changed. Maybe they need me. The new Emery didn't even blink. I pressed the side button, silencing the call. I watched the screen go black. I looked at the single key hanging on the hook by the door. It unlocked a home that was entirely mine. It unlocked a life that was finally peaceful. I picked up my drink and turned back to my friends. Freedom wasn't something you asked for. It was something you locked the door on, turned your back to, and lived. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment down below and share your thoughts on Emery's decision. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that like button so we can share this journey with even more people.